Today on the podcast, I have Donato Callahan. Donato is an interesting guy. Like he's a CEO and founder of a company called Bright Investor. So it's a platform for looking at single-family, multifamily real estate opportunities. And so these are definitely for people that are buying and looking at deals a lot, as well as kind of institutional, kind of B2B type of folks. He has some pretty strong opinions on how he got to this place and how to build kind of vertical careers that I thought was pretty interesting, with a lot of really good world examples that he's providing, as well as some expertise for people thinking about their careers early stages. So I really enjoyed his candor. He definitely got some passion, and I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Donato, welcome to the podcast. I appreciate you making the time.
I appreciate being here. Thanks for having me.
Well, good. Well, why don't you start with a little bit of background about what you do today and then how you got there? Just talk to me a little bit about the journey from, not being an entrepreneur to running a software entrepreneur business.
Yeah, so started in college, right around COVID, got interested in real estate, and that started me in my real estate investing journey, which has been its own path to several hundred doors in residential and commercial real estate. But along that path, started running into issues around aggregating data and getting access to analytics and information that I wanted to get access for residential real estate investing. And that led me to that glorious question of, I wonder if I could fix this, or is there something I could do better? And ended up meeting my co-founder, and we ended up co-founding the company together in fall 2021, and kind of went from there.
Well, that's good. So maybe talk to me a little bit about what that process looked like manually before you got there. I mean, a couple hundred doors is not chump change. And so, we have some commercial real estate pieces. I've worked very closely with a company called Property Meld, which is in the prop tech space. They do a platform for maintenance. And so, they kind of start where you're at, a couple hundred doors, and they go all the way to, people like Pure and HRG and combination of multifamily and single family. So maybe talk to me a little bit about like your premise. Did you start off with single family, multifamily? Did you, and then what did your process look like before like you decided that like there's something here, this is a side hustle to start with, and then basically you had this kind of process, realized there's some gaps, and then you basically built some automation around it?
So my first ever transaction in real estate was a remote wholesale.
So what's that? I don't know what that is.
Remote wholesale is when you wholesale a property. So you put a property under contract, and you have an assignment clause that allows you to assign your interest in that contract to a potential partner or end buyer, where you can typically collect something called an assignment fee.
Okay.
Where the end buyer pays you to step into your shoes of the contract so they can fulfill the obligation to purchase that property, hoping to either sell that property via a flip and then realize their own profit, or keep it as a rental.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. So a remote wholesale where I was in Idaho, and I connected someone who connected someone who connected someone, and I made $2,000, after 30 minutes worth of work.
Yeah.
And then my second deal was a 4-family house hack that I bought in St. Louis. So I live in one unit, rent out the others. And then that taught me the basics of landlording. And then my next deal was a 172 unit in Texas.
Wow.
And commercial. And that came from joining different masterminds, mentorships, partnering with other people to do those types of deals. And since then, I've done several more commercial deals in commercial multifamily and senior living. And then also buying more in the small to mid-range commercial multifamily in the 6 to 20 unit range.
Okay. So kind of a wide range of stuff. And so you just have an investment network that you basically draw upon to you bring these deals to investment groups, and then they basically do it, or how you're financing some of this?
So it's a combination of debt, bank debt, and LP equity through a concept called syndication, where you raise capital from limited partners who are interested in investing in real estate, and you have GPs or operating partners who are the ones who run the day-to-day. So some deals are joint ventures, some deals are on my own, some deals are syndicated, and it depends on the structure. But that's how the process has grown. And I was doing that full-time. Well, not full-time. I was doing that at night, while I was then working as a geospatial analyst for the Department of Defense by day.
Okay.
My full-time job. And then my spare time running and founding Bright Investor with my co-founder in between day job and nighttime. and then just managing my own real estate.
Wow. Seems like a full plate.
In your 20s, your plate should always be full.
That's right. Overflow. So talk to me though, like go back to the basics. Like walk to me, like what's a deal look like and how, like what are the steps in the process to go from somebody's got an opportunity to I make a decision, yay or nay, to invest? And like manually, what does that look like versus what you try to do from an automation perspective?
So I'll focus on the residential space because that's where Bright Investor tends to focus, 1 to 4 units. But there's the entire runway of people who have thought about real estate investing and the people who are actually going to start making offers on buildings. There is about 85% of your people right there. So I'm going to start the process on the I've decided to actually make effort and progress in real estate. Once someone's made that decision, they've read the books, they listen to podcasts like this one, and they're committing for it, they have to identify a market that they want to be interested in, that they're going to start looking for. They have to identify which areas have ideal rates of income growth, appreciation, rent growth, crime, schools, and inventory. They then have to make a core team of an agent, lender, insurance, contractor, handyman, title, things of that nature. Fourth, they need to start looking for properties either on market or off market through a variety of different mechanisms or channels. Fifth, they need to be able to take those properties, analyze them for value and for returns. And then six, be able to negotiate on their behalf for the deal, ask the right questions for property condition, status, and then be able to then move forward through a acquisition, making an offer, getting the loan, failing the inspection, survey, title, and then moving to actual close. And then you have the whole process of getting the PM in place and actually collecting your revenues if you're going to be a rental, for example. But that's the whole process. And Bright Investor starts at the helping you identify a market, helping you identify good areas in the market, helping you find properties in that area, then getting in touch with those property owners, analyzing the property for values, for returns, and then helping you go and connect with third parties that you might need to work with. And then what we would do next is after you acquired the property, right, we would pass that off to another company that does property management software.
Sure. Okay. And so, like, what's the business model? Like, are you just charging a subscription for this? You know, and are there tiers? Like, I get the basic concept, and there's definitely value there. But like, how do you charge for this? You know, if somebody's doing, I'm a tinkerer and I'm only going to do a couple of these versus this is my entire job.
So we really gear more towards people who are going to be more consistent in acquiring. So it's a flat rate B2B SaaS or B2C SaaS with 2 different tiers and an individual and teams account.
Okay.
People can sign up, they can stay as long as they want, then they can leave. And there's different components that are for our enterprise level clients in the home buying space, property management space, realty space, where we include things like white labeling, report branding, custom automations, widgets, and that is for that sector of clientele.
And so talk to me about who that buyer is. Like in that case, it seems more of a B2B like buy versus a B2C.
Yeah, so their B2C space are the individual investors. They might come from a place like Bigger Pockets or other places that focus on real estate and education, where they are an individual person who works a day job. They want to be growing the real estate business, all the way up to the people who they've wholesaled a little bit, they flipped a little bit, and they want to continue to scale and automate their systems. That's kind of the B2C side. The B2B side is folks like property management organizations that want to be able to target landlords, create a competitive advantage, increase your closing rates for new prospects. You can leverage Bright Investor for that. And then you have, institutional level wholesalers or realty groups that have realty divisions that want to be able to process leads quickly and analyze opportunities quickly. That is our kind of end clientele for those verticals.
Okay. So maybe go backwards to your like persona for the B2C. Like give me like a very specific persona on like how many deals are they doing a year? Like how sophisticated are they? How do they kind of progress from maybe being on the lower end of sophistication and then using your tools, get more sophisticated over time?
Ideally, this person is probably between the ages of 25 and 50, is buying 2 to 4 deals a year, is looking to acquire more rentals, and is maybe doing a flip or wholesale here and there, but actively acquiring is pretty much a baseline.
Okay.
Otherwise, if you're not actively interested in real estate, you're not going to find value in what Bright Investor does. Yeah. So actively expanding or acquiring more real estate. Someone who is typically time constrained. So someone who is either interested in learning, sees a value in knowing what they don't know, And Bright Investor provides a very fast, effective, and accurate way to kind of streamline a lot of the process. But it is very much designed to be a system that's leveraged by people who know about real estate. It's not designed to teach you about real estate. So it's best for someone who has been doing some processes manually or doing this outreach and is looking for a system that will allow them to execute on what they already know they need to execute more quickly and more effectively, as opposed to educating someone on here's why you should do real estate, because those folks just generally aren't problem aware enough to see enough long-term value in Bright Investor.
So I guess what I didn't hear in there was just their kind of technical prowess. So, I look at some of this and I think, you got rent comps, you got, ROI, you got sales comps, you got a bunch of information that's publicly available that you're probably pulling in together. Somebody who maybe manually does that versus having a way to do it in scale. I think the skeptic would say, is this a better spreadsheet or is this is a better place? But really, I guess what I'm kind of thinking about it is it because your persona basically wants to do this on scale? They don't have to deal with the spreadsheets. They don't have to go to the different websites and pull all that information together. Is that really what you're creating from a value perspective?
I would say so. Being able to scale is pretty effective here in terms of you need to see interest in expanding your portfolio and going above doing things manually. The hard part is a lot of people will say, okay, I'm going to do this manually to get started. And it's because of the work they have to put in to do it manually, they decide it's not worth it. When they could have just started with a system that was going to make it faster and easier and they could get along, and actually transact in the industry. So we are a very user-friendly platform. We never built ourselves to be like this elite data bank kind of component where you need to have exceptional knowledge in order to navigate our systems. It's designed to be very point and click, including with our brand new Bright Investor 4.0 launching here pretty quick. We have even revamped the UI even further. So it's not designed to be overwhelming. It's designed to be powerful and allow you to leverage the key functionality you need, but room to grow.
Okay. Talk to me a little bit about the data sources, right? You're pulling a lot of data in. How do you make sure, or is there times when this data disagrees and you got to kind of figure out what to go do with it? A lot of this is a data aggregation analysis, and then tell me what your criteria is, right? That's what you're trying to get them to. But what happens with all these data sources, and if they disagree, or what's the kind of data governance that you have on the backside to make sure that it's all clean and it's something it's presentable in a consistent way?
So the first thing we do is we don't scrape anything, which makes us different than other companies. So we have public, private, and commercial licensing agreements for every data type we have. Mm-hmm. So a lot of startups elect to go out there, build a bot, scrape everything, which is illegal. And then they get caught and then their companies get shut down. So we elected to not do that, which is longer and more expensive. So one of our moats is that we do things by the book. But with that, we manage dozens of API keys, dozens of partnerships, all different formatting, which can be a real pain sometimes. But ultimately, having a functionality where users can edit and overwrite data on their own side, on their own customer-facing portal, with the different APIs coming in at the same time, and then paying for higher and higher accesses, and negotiating more and more deals with more direct and higher fidelity data feeds, is how Bright Investor handles a lot of those components. And it's one of those things where anything that's good everywhere isn't great anywhere. So when you're dealing with 150 million households in the US and you're dealing with property data for each of them, kind of the baseline for projects like ours is they have to be nationwide. And so when you're dealing with nationwide, you have data sets and feeds information that works nationwide. And then you deal into one specific property and there'll be a 15% variance on that information there. So then you say, okay, great. How do I get more local information that takes proxy or takes advantage when someone's here? And because there's no perfect information in the real estate space, you end up having to create a level of sourcing and citation where, hey, this information came from this source, this came from this source. Basically, then you have scoring for this is what we think is the most appropriate based off these factors. Then you have basically applying different weighting to each of those things. So we think that this source is more reliable, so we're going to score this in this way, and then here's the sources for it. And then ultimately, I believe in the data breadth as opposed to necessarily exceptionally deep, because I can have, and I've seen multiple customers look at the same data set and say, this is amazing, this is trash. And so being able to give more sources and expand our breadth to say, here's the different ways that we're approaching this model each of them gets us closer to the overall accuracy component. And then, of course, leaning into AI to help with some of our new features coming out to kind of expedite that process.
So what is it that the individual has to do to sift through this, right? Like, so, do you think that most investors already know a local market and they're basically using this data to validate assumptions? Or do you feel like they're looking at markets kind of cold and then like the data interpretation becomes a harder, or quality bar becomes a more difficult issue?
The people who are brand new to real estate try to use Bright Investor to find a market, and they have a lot of trouble because they don't understand what's good or what's bad. They don't know what they're looking for. Yeah. What they want is for them to come to Bright Investor and say, show me a good market. And then Bright Investor says, here's a good market. That's what they want. That's not what Bright Investor is really designed to help do. It's the kind of thing where I talk about a lot of times to our clientele and on podcasts is, if I say a market's good, is it? You trust me because I buy real estate and I built this product. But what I consider good for me is not what's good for you. We cannot use language like that and be able to say with any accuracy that this is an objective representation of what's happening here. It's so subjective. And when you're newer to a industry, and anything, I am the same thing. If I try to learn something new, people who are most new need the most objectivity in terms of go here, this is good, try this. It's only when you become an expert that you can start seeing kind of the gray of, okay, well, here's what's good. And you have the nuance to be able to decipher between what's great and what's not. So by nature of that, people who come in with hey, I'm interested in this market. I have an idea of what I'm looking for. I want this to help identify from a data perspective which areas are best for me. And then what people start seeing recurring value from is using Bright Investor to source those opportunities and then analyze the deals on a day-to-day basis. So, deal came in. I want to take a look at it, see if it looks good or not. They use that. And then they use a reporting functionality to send reports to clients, partners, lenders, so on and so forth.
So I have this kind of concept in my life about I only want to get into things that I have some sort of unfair advantage, right? And so when you're young, maybe that unfair advantage is you're willing to work through, go through walls and work way harder than other folks and other people. Mm-hmm. As you get older, you think, you develop some level of expertise or domain expertise or network or something like that. And so to me, this is kind of like in this model where you're giving them a tool, but they're basically looking at it through a lens of some sort of advantage, right? They either know the local market or they know very specifically what they're looking for. Do you think that's true? Or it seems like the platform provides a lot of data and it's up to you as the investor to kind of basically find out where that unfair advantage is that you're trying to apply in a certain area.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the folks that are most successful are leveraging Bright Investor to say, I want to expedite the rate at which I can buy deals. I want to expedite the level at which I can raise capital, or I want to be able to say yes to deals faster or say no faster. I want to be able to, minimize my losers of properties and maximize how many deals that are going to be in winning situations. Right? That's really where our name comes from, right? Being a bright investor. Mm-hmm. In order to use our platform, you have to have an interest in being a smarter or a brighter investor, and you have to think of yourself as an investor. Right? If you want to be a bright investor, we're the platform for you. Whether that's for yourself, for a client of yours, or for your company, we're here to help you get straight down to the nitty-gritty of what works and what doesn't.
So let's flip a little bit to the product side of this. You started this company, a couple of years ago, probably when AI wasn't in the realm of discussion. And I think we've seen this quite a bit where a lot of companies that basically have built a workflow and a product around this, now layering AI on it can be difficult, right? You already have a workflow, you already have a process, and unfortunately you see some companies bolting on some of this as an addition. And if they had greenfield to start all over again, they would have designed it differently. So maybe talk to me a little bit about that journey, because it seems like a lot of the analysis you're doing is super well sorted to this AI technology and can probably do a lot of things really well. How do you make sure that it's basically additive to a legacy code base versus basically rethinking it from ground zero?
So it's funny, I've had several people who have reached out to us, either clients or prospects, what have you, say, are you guys thinking about using AI with this? Or how do you want to use it? Or how are you going to use AI? And I ask the same question every time. And I say, oh, yeah, we're thinking about it. How do you want us to use AI? And they go, I don't know. I just want to know if you're using AI. I'm like, okay, that pretty much sums up my approach towards AI right now in terms of the product, where it's been such a rush to incorporate this technology. And 9 times out of 10, when I ask a customer what they want, they don't know. And if there's one thing I've learned over time is don't build something for a customer just because they say it might be nice. Mm-hmm. You have to actually see, is this something you get paid for? If I say, hey, if I built this for you, would you pay me $500 a month for it? They say, oh, probably not. And more people say that, then don't build it. Because everyone will give you a laundry list of, oh, this would be cool, this would be cool, this would be cool. The amount of people who actually keep paying for it is very little. So what we've done is with our enterprise level customers say, hey, we'd love to work with you in a larger capacity. What would make your workflows easier? And they say, oh, okay, it'd be really nice to do this, 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 and this. I go, okay, let's iterate on that. And we go back and forth. We talk about what deliverables are. And a lot of those conversations we're having right now are AI based. So AI market research, AI photo analysis, AI deal analysis, to take information and then bridge the gap to where you can say, hey, is this a good deal? Is this a good market? Based on what you know about me, would I like this? And can you help kind of bridge the gap between our more experienced operators and our more junior operators to help get them caught up faster? So we already have some designs for how we're going to be implementing it officially this year, but it took a lot of time to be able to find those ways to leverage this AI in a product that is largely data-based, but in part because myself and my co-founder operate in the real estate space. We're not tech guys coming into real estate trying to build a product for people that we aren't, right? We are real estate people who understand how this industry is designed to work and how it does work in reality, and then have a tech solution to be able to take that next step. So it ends up being a smoother process, and it ends up getting to the nitty gritty of how people actually operate than coming in and creating an AI solution for this component where you have to be not necessarily pessimistic, but you have to be understanding of how people actually think, not in a boardroom, but in their own office at home, right? How are people making decisions? And there's some people, early adopters, who will ask AI and leverage AI for everything. Absolutely true. But the percentage of people who actually do that and are willing to trust a $300,000 investment decision to what an AI says doesn't exist. The people who are leveraging AI, even in a commercial world, are using it to get from, first base to third base faster. And then their domain expertise comes in and says, okay, great, make sure this actually works in real life. But no one's letting it go the whole gamut, which means that in order for AI to work effectively, the person using the product has to have access to or be the person with domain expertise to override or authorize it. So creating a full AI product of tell me, is this a good market? Is this a good deal? And having the AI come out and say yes is, in my opinion, worthless. Yeah. Because people won't use it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I guess I look at it, and so maybe let me paraphrase a little bit of what you were just saying. It seems like it's good. It basically, you give me a criteria and you give me a bunch of data, and then I'll give you something that's filtered for you to use your domain expertise to see if there's a nugget or a good deal in there, right? That's the analogy of going from first base to third base. I can do that faster, and I can give you what I think are the right criteria to look through that lens, and then you have a bunch of more qualified deals, hopefully, that you can basically evaluate from. That's one. Number two is, I would think that maybe almost using this as a training wheels for investors, right? Where it's are there a way, there's some best practices that you could kind of build out that as people are doing their first handful of deals versus they've done 20 or 30 or 40, you basically some best practices that can help you walk through that. And this kind of drives me to, are we going to see AI go from these massive horizontal models down to things that are much more vertically oriented and specific to your industry? There seems to be a bunch of domain expertise. You don't need everything that ChatGPT or Claude provides. What you need is a much more systematic and deep in the domain expertise that you want. And do you see this over time, either training an open source LLM that's specific to this type of investing, where basically it's there to not only help the entry level person getting started, but also a tool that can help, like you said, source and give you better deals for you to look through and leverage that domain expertise you have.
I see vertical agents in real estate becoming more and more prevalent. It's kind of rampant right now. People creating AI underwriting components to like get to the numbers faster. I personally am wary, and this is me, and I can't believe how I sound right now compared to 4 years ago when I was, kind of wet behind the ears, and like how I approach this conversation than how I approach it now. I tell people I sacrificed my hairline and waistline for Bright Investor, and I've learned some lessons. Ultimately, people want to automate the things that form expertise. When that's what AI is creating. Instead of having to learn what makes something good or how to operate professionally in our capacity, we have an AI that lets me operate as if I have that experience, but I don't. It's outsourced. What that does, ultimately, long term, is consolidate expertise and power into the hands of those who operate LLMs. You close your eyes, fast forward 20 years. If virtually 1% of people can actually operate code a brand new project for an enterprise level client, and everyone else is 100% reliant or 98% reliant on these AI coding tools, what do you think that company does? Do you think it's cheaper than an individual analyst conversation sticks around? No. It is a consolidation of expertise into one product that once that expertise has effectively been wiped out of working generations, this gives them all of the power to say, okay, great, this product that was $1,000 per month per overall agent is now $6,000. And what are you going to do about it? Nothing, because you've given over all of your information to these enterprises. So in real estate, that goes doubly so, because every experienced real estate investor and property manager knows that real estate deals aren't found, they're made. List price often gets negotiated down. The seller motivation, you have to be able to negotiate with them and pull the right triggers in negotiation to get them to agree to different terms, whether it's conventional, wrap, sub-2, seller financing, or other types of credits or concessions. You have to be able to then go forward and know, okay, here's what the property looks like on paper, but here's what management looks like. Here's different local laws, regulations, ordinances that will make management here easier or faster. But also here's what the tax rates look like, and here's what's going on in terms of reassessment for taxes and what property insurance is going to look like. Not only do you have to have expertise in one vertical, which is how to spot a good deal, you then have to also be able to negotiate effectively, make good deals, and look for operational efficiencies that aren't necessarily clear to a general AI model. So what I think is going to happen is you're going to have a lot of AI products come out, and the people who have the least expertise, who most want to accelerate their learning, are going to leverage them. What they're going to find is that they can get to that third base, and they're not going to be confident enough to actually pull the trigger. They're going to go find someone to say, can you tell me this is right or not? Or usually because those people don't have that network, unless they're in like an educational group or mastermind, they'll just not do anything. And they'll say, okay, well, I got here, but I don't feel confident enough to pull the trigger. I'm going to stop until I feel comfortable enough, which they won't do because they haven't done the manual practice to actually build that expertise. So then what ends up happening is the same conversation happening around, more mid-level and senior level analysts, is that people who have expertise will get to the first three bases a lot faster. And ultimately, because of their experience, they'll be the only decision makers left in the room. And if they're the only decision makers left in the room, they're going to be the only people, at least in the real estate space, who are actually doing deals and making transactions happen. And the people at the largest at the top will continue to expand their capacity to do so, which is where Right Investor, we don't want to just be an AI platform. We want the capacity for people who are earlier in their careers, not brand new, but earlier, to use us and learn what works. It's why we offer educational classes every week. It's why we have systems where you create challenges for people to come in and learn how to do real estate. We then are able to supplement that with an AI solution to say, hey, now that you've learned X and Y, here's a way to get that done faster. And then for the people who are at the top, they have a solution that gets them through the process very quickly. But I'm interested in the realities of our industry, which is real estate, and talking about what works today, what is going to work in the future, and how we can maintain the ultimate goal, which is an individual creating financial freedom, investing for wealth, what have you, continue to make that something that people can actually achieve because they have the confidence to do so. That's my rant. That's my
that's good.
Right
That's
punch.
Good. Can you put that into some buckets? Like, what can AI do today that accelerates it? What gets put into tier 2, and then what is always in that like unique domain expertise that the individual has to bring, right? Like, I feel like there is some like separation of this stuff already. Like the aggregation and pattern matching seems like something that happens today that they're very good at. And so, and like, so is there some kind of progression that you see in this where the process of going from 0 to 1 and buying something has a whole bunch of subtasks with it? Some of these things could be done by AI and helped. And then over time, it's going to, like, that tier 2 bucket is a lot more sophistication. But tier 3 is always that domain expertise and understanding is what you decide one way or the other that makes the decision.
Yeah. So aggregating data and doing the financial pro formas and pulling things like news reports, it can do well. Whether that data comes from a good source, whether the pro forma accounts for everything it's supposed to account and that ratios are appropriate, requires that domain expertise. So it can do it, but it's not to a level that's trustworthy to be able to make an investment decision. It requires double checking. Second tier, which would be upcoming, would be doing more things like photo analysis of properties, creating situations where, like, create a good offer for me using these 7 different structures, create a good offer for me that generates this kind of return based off these things and real world risk, right? So real world things around flood map, flood zones, insurance, taxes, what have you. Tell me what's, use that kind of information here. Those things, and then in addition to looking at, okay, here's what the deal is today. What would make it a good deal? Find me a pathway that would create this deal, that would take us from a no to a yes, and then help me then draft appropriate, emails or texts or conversations with the seller, and then also connect me with the right person for me to do this job with, which some major, MLS or kind of syndicated listing sites like Compass are getting into that space of how do they control their listings and then direct them to their, to their clients or their agents. So the conversation around connecting property to, professional is happening. So if you can do that in a way where the best people for the job with domain expertise are connected with those folks, you'll help clear that gap of, I know enough to be dangerous, but not enough to execute.
Okay. And how fast do you think that some of those secondary tier 2 opportunities and scenarios come available? I mean, they sound really good. And like, I think they're moving in that direction. The tier 1, like you said, data aggregation, analysis, if the sources are good, like, that seems like a really tier 1. How fast do you think the industry moves to, like, move into this tier 2 where it can do a lot of those scenario based, examples you gave?
You have 2, I think, engines kind of running on the track. One is public trust, in terms of people who are interested in real estate or become real estate. How quickly are they to adapt the thought process that this automated system is going to truly have their own wealth creation interest in mind, and they're not going to get left holding a mortgage for a horrible property. The second is a technological adaptation. I think the latter will happen first in the next 24 to 48 months. I think that the public perception is going to it'll be fastest at the institutional commercial firms. It'll be slowest at the individual mom and pop level. And ultimately, it's the people at the bottom who would benefit the most from getting through the first part, but also handicapping them because they're not building domain expertise. But I think it's something to where if everyone else can get to a deal faster than you and they know more than you can't compete. And so I have one fear of, how is it that over the course of the next 10 to 15, 20 years, because I bought my first property, it was the day I turned 22. That's when I bought my first house hack, and that set me up in ways I can never, be grateful enough for. Will people 20 years from now be able to do that? And where? And will they have the mechanisms to go out and create the same kind of life that I did? And I don't know. The answer is I don't know. We can see the trends in terms of rentership. We can see the trends in interest rates. We can see the trends in home prices. We can see the building trends. You can also see, White House rhetoric on keeping home prices elevated to help people who are existing homeowners. Well, those things do not lend itself to another generation of real estate investors getting in. What it does is lend credence to those who are already in the game, scaling and getting faster. So a bright investor has to serve both people.
And I guess maybe the bigger through line to this is, and I think this is what you're saying, maybe just in a different way, but you look at, like, Harvey, which is an AI tool for the law firms. You look at all these different areas that it's taking over. you had younger people that basically went through kind of a tough internships to learn the law and do a lot of that manual work, which made them better lawyers. And I think you're drawing the same parallel that it's like if you basically take the shortcut and use all these tools without building that domain expertise, do you end up actually building anything unique and specific over time? Or is it the people that actually have that already? That basically are the ones that benefit. And it's funny. The kind of the corollary to this is I always think about I'm 55 and like I almost feel like this technology is better for me than it is for my kids that are in their 20s, right? Because I understand how to run businesses, I understand how to manage people, and this becomes a facilitator of that. And so if I understand how to go from A to D, then that's great. My kids are kind of looking and saying, how do I just go at A to B, A to B, A to B? Because that's all they know. And so I think the pattern still works in your world where it's like, is there going to be a new generation of these people or is it going to change? Like what's going to happen? And, I think it's TBD.
Yeah, really, we just don't know what's going to happen in terms of, what AI products will stand the test of time. Are people going to be willing to trust them with their own decisions? Are they going to be willing to pay human prices for AI generated content? So if using your lawyer example, okay, we all know that lawyers, right, as an associate lawyers, right, a firm pays them 60 or 70, 80 bucks an hour, bills them out at 250 or 200, right? They make their margin on the labor per hour. It's in a law firm's example, and any labor arbitrage model, which you could argue is all of business, right, in capitalist society. If they can lower the cost of that labor, leveraging AI, they will do so because it's just economically feasible, right? Especially if they have shareholders, you have a fiduciary duty to increase shareholders. They have a legal obligation to go that direction. So you have less people who are getting in the industry, less new people being trained. That creates, one, a question of, will people continue to pay prices once they know that a person isn't generating that content and they're not paying for expertise or paying for a model? I don't know. The same conversation around virtual assistants happens every single day. Like, we don't have to pay an American. We can pay someone from, Thailand or, Egypt or India and get the similar content out. That already happens all over the real estate industry. The other thing you have to say is, how long can the world's economic system afford all these new people who aren't getting in the industry and all these domain experts who are continuing to consolidate power, services, and capital by nature of their elevated position when this all started? And what happens when they go? Where does this going? It's kind of like you can look at any population graph, the population graph when you talk about, you have the triangle for heavy growth and you stabilization, then you have, a country that's failing, it becomes like a V, where it gets really heavy up top and low at the bottom. That's every human geographer's signal that this country is not going to be around forever. This is going to fail. And when you have a system that continues to prioritize how low can I get my labor cost per hour, and then we're making some very wealthy individuals who have a lot of power, they can take all the clients here. When they go, you're going to have a continual decrease in quality generationally as things go on. Or you have just absolute conglomerate monopoly power at those who provide the systems with access to that labor. Because we can look at, in my opinion, 80 to 90% of large-scale institutional or venture capital-backed consumer-facing apps, which OpenAI and Claude and Gemini, and, all these different companies are creating. They're focused on consumers and they have an enterprise applicability, right? They all start cheap until they're not. I love Uber. It's a great example. Why is Uber great? It came in super cheap. Killer taxis. This is amazing. On demand. 10 years later, 15 years later, all of a sudden you're back up. The same thing is going to happen. We've seen this play out. You're going to remove the capacity for young human workers to come in. And as soon as the market has control to the level of it would be damaging or exceptionally degrading to society to not have this system in place to do this work anymore, that's when you see rates all of a sudden going back up to what humans cost or more. Because what are you going to do about it? I mean, and I hate to sound like I'm pessimistic here, and I'm not. I think there's going to be a lot of great things that happen through the system, But it's only going to reward the people who see the trends that are coming and see this widening gap and say, one vehicle that I can choose to pursue to help insulate me from this and my family is to create independent sources of income. How can I do that? Real estate is a way to do that by either buying real estate as an investor, selling real estate as an agent, helping people manage their real estate as a property manager. We can create wealth for ourselves. Okay, this vehicle of real estate that can create income and wealth for people becomes more and more critical as traditional methods of generating income, or even better speaking, more desirable 21st century methods of generating income go away. I'm thinking about white collar work that's high ticket or high cost. Not everybody wants to be a plumber. Not everybody wants to go work with their hands. Some people can't. Even if there's opportunity in different trades, we have shown and trained generations of people that you should be used to this kind of work with this kind of pay. And if that goes away, real estate becomes a facet of how can I support myself independently? And Bright Investor can be there to capitalize on those folks who want to be able to create their own path or support their clients who are creating that path in a functional, easy to use, accurate way.
So is that your message to your 22-year-old self, or somebody like I said, I got kids that are either just about graduating from college or in the market. It's a tough job market for young people in general, and I think they're starting to see the early indications of their job is getting compressed at the lower end, and so is obviously. Investing is one. Is there a through line, which is getting some domain expertise that can stand the pressures that we're talking about doing over time during their career, so they can actually have a career, right?
Yes.
And so, I think that's maybe the through line that you're trying to pull through all this. Whether it's real estate investment, that's one aspect of it, but finding that domain expertise and doubling down is probably the theme.
I would tell you that I don't believe in a career as it's generally defined.
Okay.
And I 100% believe in creating kind of like making a vertically integrated worker.
So tell me what that means.
Vertically integrated worker is if I work in, let's do, I'll use not an appropriate example, but a good one for this conversation, teacher. One teacher teaches math. One person teaches science. One person teaches language arts. One person teaches history. As labor consolidates, employers and schools, it's not effective or cost effective to hire 4 teachers. What would be really nice is that if they had one teacher who could teach all 4 subjects. And instead of having the kids rotate the teachers, day 1, they teach math to 5 different classes. Day 2, they teach history to 5 different classes. And that's what I think is happening in the economy, in the workforce as a whole. In order to be successful, you cannot just be one thing. You need to be able to say, I'm going to do this. And then I'll do this, and then I'll do this. In my situation, I buy real estate. I build software products for people to go and buy real estate. I work as a director of acquisitions with commercial real estate companies to help them buy and underwrite and analyze real estate. I mentor people in how to buy real estate, and I help companies raise money to buy real estate. I have expertise in multiple components of this in this industry. I don't have to send someone elsewhere for more and more as time goes on. And as a worker, you need to be able to sit down and say, and I'm not saying it's fair at all, and fair is a word that you really can't think in your mind when you go into a workplace. When your boss comes to you and says, hey, I have to let you go, you cost too much, what you should be prepared to do is say, okay, great, I understand that. What if instead I did this person's job and this person's job and this person's job for 150% of my base pay, and I'm going to learn everything I can. And you're going to basically branch out. It's not fair to you as a person. It's not. It sucks. Unfortunately, that's where the market's at. But if you can sit there and make yourself someone who can carry the ball across multiple steps in that company's process, you still allow them to cut the costs of maybe having 3 people into 1 person. You create domain expertise in multiple verticals of the segment, and you're someone who overall creates higher income for yourself, but it's through doing more work. And then you take that domain expertise, and that's what you package into either your own venture, own enterprise, or the next company once you've achieved a level of expertise that allows you to be, sitting in that level of this person has so much experience. We're paying them this big premium because they know how to do this and this and this and this. The same thing gets stacked on every board of directors. Why should you invest in our company? Because our board has cured cancer and done everything from under the sun. That's what they want. I'll say that's the approach that I've taken in life, and it's worked out very well. It almost always is going to be dependent on someone with the time and energy willing to work harder for less in short terms than someone else, even if it's not necessarily the most just or fair situation. And
do you think the majority of the people will do that? I'm curious. Are you an anomaly, or do you think the majority of young people will do that?
Well, I mean, my parents think I'm weird, so let's just start there.
Okay.
I mean, well, I'm my own person, and I'm not saying that I'm the standard in any way, or maybe I am, but I think that the reality is not many people will make that decision. It's going to take a very elite few who kind of see the future where we're going and make that decision, which is why we see the rise of side hustles. We see the rise of people who are finding alternate ways to find income. And those are great. What the most successful people will do is say, instead of having, working as a DoorDash driver and a dog walker and this, what side hustles can I do that are all in the same ecosystem, that build off each other? By doing one, it makes me better at the other. So if that is, I don't know, let's say like an investment advisor. Like, hey, I can help you analyze good opportunities to invest in, right? I also have access to a bunch of private credit opportunities where you can invest alternatively that I have a relationship there. At the same time, I own this bookkeeping and CPA service. It's going to allow you to take those investments and then make sure that they're getting as tax advantageous as possible. Things like that allow you to be the kind of one-stop shop as a person, right? The one-stop shop as a business model has been around for a while. If you can be a one-stop shop person, that's where the future of the economy goes. But the painful reality of that is that means we need fewer people. And that's the problem we're seeing play on politics today.
Yeah, so I mean, I totally buy into this because I personally have done it, right? So I have wildfire. Like, I think, I live in a relatively small city. We have a decent technical university, but we don't have a lot of great technology jobs. So really the scarcity here is jobs. And so if we have Wildfire is Labs is a product that basically produces startups, that's great. That creates jobs. If you have jobs, then they need co-working spaces, they need apartments. And so we have a group that does nothing but commercial real estate to kind of provide those types of services to technology companies. And then basically I get to invest in them because I know them, and I get to do consulting work on top of it. So you basically have this kind of vertical integration, what you're talking about, that starts with jobs, and you're basically just following them around. But, it's taken me a long time. I had basically a career, 30-year career in software, B2B software, that basically I parlayed this into angel investing, into consulting type work, into real estate. It's taken some time to put all those pieces together. But to your point, it started with a domain expertise that you could fracture out and create domain expertise that basically built on top of them like Legos.
Yeah. And that's what people need to be able to recognize is the value, because a reality of human psychology is that once you do something for someone once, they want you more in their life to do more things for them. That's why when you hire someone to do like painting, like, oh, you guys did a great job. Can you guys replace my roof? Hey, can you guys replace my windows? Like, once you've proven that if someone likes you, they trust you, they want more from you. And where businesses succeed is when they say, oh, we can get that done for you. And you capitalize on that. And so be the vertically integrated person where, oh, you are you can help me with teaching. Oh, it's a great example. Hey, can you homeschool my kids? Yeah, I'm a teacher by day. Can you homeschool my kids too? If a couple days a week? Yeah, sure. Hey, do you have private tutoring sessions on top of that? Yeah, sure I do. Do you have any resources or like books or like content that you think could really help my son or my daughter get ahead? Yeah, absolutely. Here's this business that I have for that. And by the way, can you have like anything that lets people kind of copy your model or like kind of set these kind of educational businesses up somewhere else? Yeah, absolutely. Here's that. Keep thinking about all the things people need. Vertically integrate yourself into it. That's what people want to see.
Yeah, that's good. Well, we're kind of coming up on their time. If you basically had to go back and give yourself some advice that you've learned over the last, let's say 10, 12 years, whatever it's been since you kind of graduated from college, what would you say the kind of big ahas have been during that period of time? We all come out probably a little naive and excited about it with tons of energy, but I think you've gotten some lessons learned. So what would be a couple of those lessons learned that you would go back and tell your 22 self?
So first thing I'll say is 12 years ago, I was 14. Okay. So I've been out of college for 4 years. I should clarify.
Okay.
I've been out of college for 4 years. So yes, I got a turbocharged path to my real world views.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. So I graduated in 2021 from college. What I would tell you, my 22-year-old self, all those years and years ago, geez, it's so hard thinking back to all those decades and decades back in my youth, is the power of why not. And I tell people this all the time. Why not is infinitely more powerful than asking why. So when someone comes to you as a young person with opportunity, something you can do, most people say, well, why should I do that? Or what's the value there? And they operate from a perspective of, I'm not doing it, and I'm asking why to figure out why I should. And that operates from a standpoint of stagnation. When you ask why not, so Todd, you come to me and say, oh, Donato, I'd love to get you involved in startup consulting or coaching. Like, this is something maybe just somebody can find value in it. My first answer is, why not? Default is I'm doing it. Unless there's a super amazing, insane reason that I absolutely should not do that thing. The default is why not? I'm going for it. You need to say why not and say yes to these opportunities and just see where they go and build a connection. Because in my career, see, I use the word I don't like. In my career, my lifetime so far, I can very quickly and linearly identify how this became this, how this became this, and how I can paint that picture super clear. And it's all because of saying why not. So that's what I recommend to young people. Go out there, and for tactical advice, if you want to get into real estate, go move to a really cheap Midwestern city around the Mississippi River Delta, going all the way up to North Canada. Find a cheap, affordable place to live that can get you to 2 to 4 unit building. Go house hack it with an FHA loan or a VA loan if you have access to it. Get to a point where if you moved out, you'd be break even. And then go do that as many times as you can every 18 months to 24 months over the course of your entire 20s. Go do that. That's my tactical advice.
Well, that's good. That's a great way to end this. Well, I appreciate you sharing all your wisdom from all those years. That's
thank you.
Cool.
Can you see the gray? Yeah.
Exactly. Well, no, seriously. I mean, I think there's a lot of hard lessons that have been learned through that period of time. I think there's a lot of things that if people really sat down and wanted to do the work, there's a roadmap to helping them get there. So I appreciate you sharing that information.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, well, take care. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Startup Stories from the Treehouse. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to like, follow, or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you found our conversation helpful, leave a review. It really helps other founders discover our show. For more insight and episode summaries, don't forget to subscribe to the Wildfire Labs Substack. We appreciate your support and can't wait to share more stories with you next time.